Hello, I'm Rod Dreher. Most Catholics will know the name of Saint Benedict of Nursia, who died in the year 547 because he is the founder of Western monasticism. But many Orthodox may not know that Benedict is also an Orthodox saint, as he lived and died many centuries before the Great Schism. Indeed, when I came into the Orthodox Church 17 years ago, I chose Benedict as my patron. Orthodox monasticism does not observe the rule of Saint Benedict. Nevertheless, the basic monastic virtues found within the practices commanded by Benedict are also present in Orthodox monasticism. Some years back, I traveled to Norcia, the name in Italian of the mountain village where Benedict was born, and spent some time talking with the Catholic monks in the monastery there. I wanted to learn some monastic principles that guided their life together and that we lay Christians from all churches can use to help us live more faithfully in the world. Why do monks need a rule? And why do we? Father Cassian Folsom, the founding prior of the Norcia Monastery, told me that a rule exists to channel your spiritual energy, your work, your activity, so that you are able to accomplish something. Monastic life is very plain, Father Cassian told me. People from outside perhaps have a romantic vision, perhaps what they see on television, of monks sort of floating around the cloister. There is that, and that's attractive. But basically, monks get up in the morning, they pray, they do their work, they pray some more. They eat, they pray. They do some more work, they pray some more, and then they go to bed. It's rather plain, just like most people. The genius of Saint Benedict, he said, is to find the presence of God in everyday life. People who are anxious, confused, and looking for answers are quick to search for solutions in the pages of books or on the internet, looking for that killer app that will make everything right again. But the rule of St. Benedict tells us, no, it's not like that. You can achieve the peace and order you seek only by making a place within your heart and within your daily life for the grace of God to take root. Divine grace is freely given, but God will not force us to receive it. It takes constant effort on our part to get out of God's way and let His grace heal us and change us. To this end, what we think does not matter as much as what we do, and how faithfully we do it. The first principle of monastic living is order. If a defining characteristic of the modern world is disorder, then the most fundamental act of resistance is to establish order. If we don't have internal order, we will be controlled by our human passions and by the powerful, who are in greater control of directing modernity's deep currents. For the traditional Christian, establishing internal order is not mere discipline, nor is it simply an act of will. Rather, it is what the theologian Romano Guardini called man's efforts to regain his right relation to the truth of things, to the demands of his own deepest self, and finally, to God. Order is not simply a matter of law and its enforcement. In the classical Christian view, the law itself depends on a deeper conception of order, an idea of the way ultimate reality is constructed. This order may be unseen, but it is believed and internalized by those living within a community that professes it. The point of life for individuals, for the church, and for the state is to pursue harmony with that transcendent, eternal order. Every monk's life and all of his labors must be directed to the service of God. The rule of St. Benedict teaches that God must be the beginning and the end of all our actions. To bound our spiritual passion by the rhythm of daily life and its disciplines, and to do so with others in our family and in our community, is to build a strong foundation of faith, within which one can become fully human and fully Christian. I asked one of the Norcia monks, Father Basil, why it is important to follow rules of discipline that might not make much sense to us. And this, by the way, is a question that many converts new to the Orthodox life have about fasting rules. Father Basil said that, quote, the monk is deeply aware of the fact that in himself and in others that order has been disturbed, has been disrupted by the fall, by original sin, and by the personal sin of each person. The monk enters the monastery knowing that finding that order doesn't come easily. You have to fight for it, to work for it, and you have to be patient to achieve it. But it's worth it because that order, he said, gives us peace. Submitting to rules one doesn't understand is difficult, but it's a good way to counteract the carnal desire for personal independence. There may not be spiritual merit in choosing to eat 2 dishes instead of 3 at a meal, but the humility that comes with agreeing to submit to another's decision that one do so can be transformative. It trains you to desire ascetic sacrifice for the greater glory of God and for theosis. Not only does the order of the monastery produce humility, but it also produces spiritual resilience. In one sense, the Benedictine monks of Norcia are like a Marine Corps of the religious life, constantly training for spiritual warfare. Father Augustine Wilmeth, the monastery's brewmaster, told me that the structure of life in the monastery is not just pointless repetition. It's to train your heart and your spirit so that when you need it, when you don't feel strong enough to get through a difficult moment, you will fall back on your training. You know that you wouldn't be strong enough to do it if you hadn't been working at it all along. In other words, ordering one's actions is really about training one's heart to love and to desire the right things, the things that are real, without having to think about it. It's about acquiring virtue as a habit. And it's the little things like that that order the soul. When the early Benedictine monks went into the chaotic forest of post-Roman Europe, they brought order. Peasants who were living in fear of barbarian raids and who knew no order could see that these men of God offered stillness and peace. That peace radiated out to them and drew the people to the monastery. Ultimately, it drew them to Christ. So it must be with us. We are not called to live by monastic discipline, but all of us are called to discipline our lives by prayer, fasting, liturgy, and living godly lives. This is not just a calling for spiritual athletes. This is a calling for all followers of Jesus. I'm Dreher. Thanks for being with me today.